Hello, welcome back. It is week 164 on Out on That Line podcast. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
Jeff, a lot of people thought they could stop me from coming here tonight and making it for this here podcast, but they didn't and they couldn't. And you know what they got to show for it? Not much, except their own teeth, picking their own teeth out of their crap. God damn it. Because we're here, we persevered, and we're ready to do the show. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. And you know what I always say? It wouldn't be worth doing if you didn't have some haters. So I'm glad to have them. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad everybody's here. Well, what do you say we talk about the glorious one? And her name is GloRilla. And I was mentioning before the show that I was going to try to do the accent, that Memphis accent for the show, and I just don't think I could do it. I just don't think I could literally like wrap myself around those words at all. But it pops up all over the place on this album, and I'm curious what you thought about this album, because I had a pretty good time listening to this one, and I'm gonna have fun explaining why. And I'm very interested to hear about whether you'd had experiences with GloRilla before, because I really hadn't. I don't think I'd heard anything other than the song she did with Sexy Red that was on TikTok everywhere.
And I didn't even have that because I'm not on the TikTok and I'm not getting TikTok content funneled towards me. I know I heard one song. Again, it's one of those things I can't place which one it was. I know I've heard at least one GloRilla song before, enough to know that when you sent me 3 albums a while ago, Billy Strings, Jamie XX, Jamie XX, and GloRilla, I looked at all 3 of them. There was immediate name recognition. So it wasn't like who or what is a GloRilla. But I don't even know if you can call what I knew about her familiarity. Name recognition, we'll stick with that. So I really had like no expectations going in. I just knew the kind of people we had to compare her to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fairly or unfairly, I'm like, all right, well, you've got Sexy Red, you got Ice Spice, you've got, going back more, Megan Thee Stallion, you got Doja Cat, you got Nicki Minaj. You have your usual suspects in rap, and plenty more that don't get the airtime that I think a lot of the, I'll just say, undeserving people like Ice Spice and Nicki Minaj get. I don't get Ice Spice. I don't get Ice Spice.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
So all of that is to say, and we'll get into it, this is like kind of not my thing. Trap is kind of not my thing, and I'm better able to articulate why in a nice way, because it's one of those things where I'm like, it's not for me, but I'm not going to call it bad. But I think I can have a more interesting conversation about that than I've had in the past, because I really drilled down into it. So I'm curious about, when you say you had fun with this, I'm curious what that fun looked like.
So there's always been kind of, I've listened to, we've all listened to rap music forever, and I definitely have listened to a ton. I used to listen to a bunch with Mitch and Danny back in the day. The kind of styles that I gravitated most towards was like the Northeast style, like DMX, Jay-Z, 50 Cent, a little bit more aggressive. Like, I guess you could probably lump, Eminem more in with that style than like a West Coast sort of style. I also really loved Southern rap. So bands like Outkast, Ludacris, Trick Daddy, there's a lot of these artists that I, listen to almost as much as I listen to any of those kind of New York artists. And one thing I really liked about this is it gave me that feeling like I was listening to like one of the older like Ludacris albums, where it was just very, I want to say just like grimy and like raw. It gave me that same feeling. Now, I don't know that I really would put it up there with those albums. Like Back for the First Time by Ludacris and Word of Mouth are 2 of my favorite albums ever. I don't think I'd put it up with that. I certainly wouldn't put it up with like Stankonia by Outkast or Aquemini. I wouldn't, I don't think I'd put it up with those, maybe with like Speaker Box and Love Below. Those are their most famous ones, and I really didn't like those. I guess if people think I have a hot take today to spew, that's probably the one. I really didn't like that Andre 3000 flute album either. That's nominated for a Grammy, by the way. Weird sidebar, but that's a strange thing. But what I appreciated about this is there were a lot of songs that were just like fun. And I think the strength of it is, I think she takes the music seriously. I don't think she takes herself that seriously, because I feel like where you kind of run into a roadblock with some of this is when it's completely all braggadocious and there's no kind of like inner voice coming out saying, talking about any insecurities or anything like that. I feel like there was kind of a good mix of that sort of stuff on here. So that made where it would normally be like kind of throwaway, because I don't think any of the beats or like the music itself was overall that interesting throughout the album. I think we might have different opinions on this, but I think she's very engaging as a rapper, and kind of generally as a storyteller. There were some songs on here that I generally had a great time with. And as much as I don't like Christian music and I don't like a lot of the things that it stands for, I can get down with a Kirk Franklin jam any day of the week. I don't know if you're familiar with the song Stomp or the song Praise You that he did with, I think, Tori Kelly.
Yeah.
Just jams. You know what I mean? Like it's like Uptown Funk. It's not going to change my perspective on the world, but it's going to make me have more fun with it. That's for sure. And I kind of separate the Christianity part of it from it, because overall it was just a bop. And I felt like there were enough moments like that on this album that far outweighed anything that I didn't like.
See, and I don't even divorce the Christianity component from it in a really like good and interesting way, because to me, her angle on it is what was like one of the most interesting things about this album to me. Um, and it's kind of dovetails with my point about like trap and what I don't necessarily like about trap. So starting there, this is going to sound like a total dig, and it's not. It's just an observation, but trap is such a specific thing, like down to the drums you use and like the patches you use and all of that. It is so specific that by its very nature, like all trap songs are pretty homogenized. They all pretty much sound like one another, but that's a feature, not a bug, right? Like it is the skeleton that they can then hang a lot of other stuff on. And truth be told, for me, there's just not enough variety there for me to be like, that's a go-to genre. And to be fair, some of my go-to genres are frequently disappointing. You try to get anyone doing good yacht rock these days, it's few and far between. But the
Well,
ones who
these
nail it,
days,
nail it. God damn it, Jeff. Don't you fucking start.
even like one of the kings of yacht rock hates yacht rock.
Don't you fucking start with me. I'm so excited for that documentary to come out on HBO. But anyway, for me, the fact that trap is, I don't want to call it generic. For what it's doing something very different from other genres. It's just within trap. I personally, and having not listened to enough of it, I'll admit that, haven't found anyone that's like really kind of doing something interesting with it to me. So with that being said, there's a lot of trap influence on this. You talking about like Ludacris and like Southern rap and crunk, I guess specifically. That is highly enjoyable. Like I can't sit there and be like, yeah, I was hanging out with my friends bopping a Ludacris too. We were the lamest fucking kids alive. We were listening to like Japanese anime music and stuff, dude. It was no childhood. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. So I didn't have those same influences, but I do appreciate, like, you haven't lived until you've seen Rory do Roll Out at karaoke.
Oh my God.
It's perfect. Where you get your weed from. It's like listening to Hillary Clinton speak. It's
how
amazing.
you smoke so good.
And he does the little body into it. It's fantastic. I'm getting
noted great dancer, Rory.
Noted hardcore Lothario, all around man of mystery, Rory. But anyway, I'm getting way off point. All of that was my dissertation about trap and what she did to kind of keep me invested in this was, to get back away all the way around to it, that Christianity angle or more so the gospel angle, because it wasn't like a preachy, there was no like evangelism in this. It was all very private and public, personal, kind of working through her thoughts. And one thing I noticed is there's no like, "Oh, thank you for getting me through this." There's just a lot of, "Well, you haven't done anything for me yet. I'm just kind of putting it out there that I'm in
Mhm.
this sticky situation." And it's not like preachy. It's not prescriptive. It's just the fact that she's willing to several times kind of tap into that thing that she loves. She wanted to be a gospel singer when she
Mhm.
was a kid, and then she lost her voice. I don't know what that means.
There's plenty of artists that kind of go outside the box and add other things in, but there's always that element of there's, a verse where they're gonna, you know, have some lines that rhyme, and I think her voice is interesting. The way she's able to pronounce the words and make them connect is interesting because I think if you get somebody with just a regular non-accent, like you pick somebody from the Midwest or somebody from the Northeast or the Northwest, that don't have like a strong Southern accent or a strong New York accent or, any of that, I think what you'll end up having is some songs that just don't sound nearly as interesting. But because it's delivered by her and the way that she can put these kind of thoughts together and these words together, there's a lot of very funny moments. There's a lot of actually very poignant moments. I think when I like how you explained that it didn't feel evangelical when she was going over the Christianity and kind of Jesus and God stuff. I appreciate that you're telling me your experience without making me feel like it needs to be mine as well. And I think that's a shows a maturity in probably herself, and then that comes through in the writing. I think being able to say, I find a lot of joy in this and I'm going to put it on my album and not feel like it's forcing you to be like, you should feel this way too. I think DMX was also great for that. He always had these conversations like I think every album he had the prayer on it and he was very sincere in that. In all of his music, it was always this kind of like, there's two sides of my coin. There's the one that does all the stuff that I feel like I need to ask for forgiveness for, and then there's the side that asks for the forgiveness and tries to live that way. And I think there's a lot of that in this GloRilla album. I think there's a lot of the things that I loved about DMX was his ability to self-reflect. Certainly thought very highly of himself as he should have and as she should, because she's very braggadocious on a lot of these songs, but there's also songs where she talks about getting cheated on and talks about how that kind of broke her down. She, that she's stronger now, but for a while she wasn't, and asking for help from God, now it's asking for help from her friends. I think there's a lot of self-awareness here with a lot of self-confidence. And I think that's a great combination. And when you have that, you don't have to have the craziest, most exciting songs in general. They're going to be engaging at a certain level just because of who she is. And I think, and you add in T-Pain. I mean, I saw that on the track listing when I first opened up the album to the couple weeks ago, and I sent it to you, and I was like, oh, there's a Teddy Payne song on this.
I was not quite as taken with the T-Pain content, unfortunately. He seems like a great dude. I just it's once again, it's a case of it's never been my thing.
Mhm.
Um, but trying to find something besides that to say, it really did, I think for me, come down to like three very unique things that GloRilla's got going for her is the voice, which a lot of people seem to have a problem with. The
Mhm.
voice, the accent, and like the cadences and the way that like, we joke, but imagine a person from Baltimore trying to do this music. It would be a nightmare. You guys want to know who the toughest guy who lives near the ocean is? I had sex with my teacher when I was 14, yeah. Like, but her voice, her accent, and I think for me it really is I don't want to limit it to the Christianity. I just think that was a great example of like the gospel influence, invoking God several times, using um not just our pal Kirk, but it's Maverick City Music
Mhm.
is like a big like cool guy Christian outfit. Like the cool Christians are listening to this music, which is definitely not the same word repeated over the course of 9 minutes repetitively.
Mhm.
Definitely not. By amazing, talented singers who just sing the same thing over and over again. But it's different. It makes her stand out. Like she's like very uniquely herself. She's not just like, okay, well, in this landscape, I gotta be a butt girl too. You know,
Hmm.
I got to do the butt songs. I got to like Megan the Stallion's talking about snakes, and we're got to like, should I do like food motifs for like, you know, a hot dog going into a bun? Like, what should I do?
Hmm.
There's none of that. There's, I only know who I am, which is Gloria Hallelujah. I can't remember her last name. It's like Graham or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but she's just very true to herself. And you can go, well, you don't know her. How do you know that? And it's like, that's what this album does well. It gives you a sense of self. This isn't a character. This isn't someone who's putting on any values that aren't hers. You get a sense of who this is, and not trying to compete with other people or do what other people are doing makes it interesting in a genre where it kind of takes more for me to get interested. So none of these songs was reinventing the wheel. I would have killed for one of them to even put a hat on a hat. It just musically not that interesting
Yeah.
to me, but GloRilla the person definitely is.
Yeah. I think for me, this album is a pretty solid stream it. I don't think this is one that if you, it's certainly if you're already a rap fan or a Southern rap fan, like you're gonna like this album. There's plenty there for you to get into. It might be some songs you don't like or whatever, but I think pretty solid stream it. But I am looking forward to the next one from her because I think when you have success on, at this level, it gives you a little bit of freedom on what you can do with that next one. And hopefully she has it and hopefully she takes advantage of it. Because I think there was a little bit of variation here. I think there was, I'm sure there's a lot of albums where you're not getting Kirk Franklin in like a gospel song on a trap album. I don't know how many times that those two things have come together. So not that I'm like begging for more Christian music or anything, but I think it's a good thing that there's some other things coming into play here. And hopefully that's the sort of stuff that she expands on for the next one because I already like this well enough. It didn't get quite to the buy it level for me. Probably a good handful of songs I really enjoyed listening to on this, and the rest, nothing I really didn't like. I will say that about the album. That's why it's pretty solid stream it for me. I don't think it ever was considered in skip it territory for me. At the same time, I don't think it ever really got considered for buy it territory.
Yeah, I will say if I had not done a like really committed to like if we weren't doing this album for the show, where you really are committed to like I got to turn this over and look at it from all angles and take it apart and all that like we
Mm-hmm.
do, surgical on this podcast. All right, we're nothing if not surgical.
They call me the scalpel.
That's right. They call me Dr. Malpractice. Um but like if this had just been something that I found on my own in the wild on Spotify, probably would not have given it another listen. But when you're like, all right, well, I have to try to find an angle into this. I can't just go, "Eh, it's not for me."
Hmm.
I've decided I'm like, you have to be able to articulate why that is, other than just like mysteriously, this genre just misses with me. I don't know why. Like you have to be
Hmm.
able to say like why this specific thing does or doesn't work. Find a nice thing to say. And if you
Hmm.
can't, be entertaining when you trash it. This was not something I could conceivably trash despite it not really being in one of my sweet spot genres. Um, but again, I have to call out the fact that like you're doing something different. GloRilla is doing something different. It's a nice antidote to something that I also love. I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite and be like, yeah, I never used to be a fucking dumb, horny idiot who loved Megan the Stallion. Like, 4 years ago, and I was all about it. Like, it's not to like be disingenuous and turn your back on it or to like stigmatize it and be like, is that all you can do is have a butt? It's music that I genuinely enjoy. Megan the Stallion, Doja Cat, big Doja Cat guy, obviously. Um, I'm able to stand by the music and my opinions on it. GloRilla is just like something new to be added to the broth. The straw that stirs the drink being GloRilla, being like, okay, well, I'm here. I'm not really doing butt forward stuff.
Hmm.
I'm actually bringing like a very wholesome Christian element into this, which if that's not for you, that's not for you. I'm just saying what's on my mind, not telling you to think any particular way about it. I brought some of my musically inclined Christian friends. Do you like this? Do you like this? And in all sincerity, one of the most moving songs I've ever heard, and you're going to laugh, One of the most moving songs I've ever heard is a gospel song from a Tyler Perry movie.
Oh my god.
The gospel song "Father, Can You Hear Me" in Diary of a Mad Black Woman, which, no joke, when I was 13, I watched like 19 times. I don't know why I love that movie. I was like, "This is cinema."
Oh my god.
I was obsessed with Diary of a Mad Black Woman for a while, for a brief, burning hot while. And that song in there is like one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. It's incredible singers swinging for the fences. It's just like it's gospel at its purest. It's just like, so if you look at it just musically, it's beautiful. And you know these people were like spiritually we're swinging for the fences, and I'm like, yeah, this is exciting. GloRilla doesn't do anything like that on this album, but I would not hate the next time around seeing you're talking about like what maybe you'd like to see and you're excited about next. I wouldn't mind seeing her take a hard steer into gospel.
Hmm.
People saying you can't, your voice is funny and weird and obnoxious. And it's just like, I'm not saying it, a lot of people are saying it. But if that's people's take, shut them up. Shut them up
Hmm.
and do a gospel album the GloRilla way. I would be very into that. The glimpses we got on this, I would be very into it
Hmm.
because it's something different. But that's only if that's interesting to GloRilla. So in the meantime, I'm gonna give this a solid stream it.
Yeah. And I think that was I felt like I knew that's where I was going to fall after the first one, and gave it a few more listens through to just pick out all the kind of details and things like that. But I knew I was like, there's nothing on this I didn't enjoy, that I was like checking my phone to be like, oh, when's this one over? There was none of that on this album. And it went by, it was like 40 minutes or something like that. So it was not an overly long album. But I think, I don't know how much I'll enjoy a gospel thing, but I think it's as long as she's just doing something else, because it seems like she's got the creative juice to really kind of expand on things here, and I hope she does. And you can find that album right here on this podcast when it does come out. And where can they find that in the future, Alex, if they
Ooh,
need to?
well, Jeff, I'm so glad you asked. Because the answer is youtube.com/C/out on that line, folks. Folks, this episode dealt in some fairly, I think, deftly handled, but important spiritual and religious themes. Okay. Primarily, there's this idea that, you know, he say he want to see the pussy cream. So I tell him cash rules. I mean, I don't know if that's Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, but I know that's gospel. And we've brought you savory, wholesome spiritual truths
Mhm.
tonight. Don't you think that that has earned a subscribe? Don't you think it would be wise to turn your notifications on by clicking the little bell so the next time we fart out a nugget of wisdom, you're the first one there to get it in your mouth, get your little dream? You know what I'm saying? Haven't we done enough for you tonight to like the video? I'll make this one easy for you. It looks like a thumbs up, which is what I'm giving this episode tonight. We did one of these. We did a thumbs up. So give it one. But most importantly, there's nothing more important than using your voice. And you have a right to use your voice in the comment section at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Review this episode, review all the other episodes, leave angry comments, leave comments of praise and adulation. Just say something. Tell me how your day went. Tell me something you can't tell your spouse, something you're afraid to tell your child, something your priest said. Don't ever tell anyone this again. Don't admit this in public. If you're in witness protection, not anymore, baby. You can shout it from the rooftops in the comments section of literally any video at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Folks, come and join us and be healed.
That was wonderful. And you know what? When you click that little bell, an angel gets its wings.
Mm.
Till next time.